So I'm currently out hiking here in Redwood Forest in coastal California, and I wanted to make a video like this for quite some time and chat a bit about what I would give my younger self in terms of creative advice, especially in my 20s. So at this point, January 2025, I'm 28 years old, which might seem young in the grand scheme of things, but I've been at this for quite some time. I've been full-time freelance now for 10 years, so since I was 18 years old, and I'd like to think I've learned some information that might be helpful to some of you guys who maybe are just starting out, or maybe people who are also still established as well. Also, California redwood forests are just miraculous. Look how beautiful this is. So the first piece of advice that I have, and this is probably the hardest pill of all to swallow, is there's really no shortcuts between where you are currently and where you want to go. And I had to kind of swallow this pill early on when I first moved to LA. I moved there thinking that I had a lot more things figured out than I actually did, and I was quickly humbled by the fact that there was a lot of really talented people there, and there was a lot of things that I did not understand or know how to do. And instead of trying to reach for that next shortcut or reach for the next hack per se to try to cheat the system, I put my head down, I tried to learn as much as I could, and I learned from people who are better than me and more skilled in certain areas. And this has proven to be really helpful for me. Keeping a humble attitude throughout all of it, I think also really helps. But just understanding that there's going to be really hard times and there's going to be long periods of time where you feel like you're not growing. And slowly and surely, step by step, you're actually able to start piecing together your career path and eventually get to where you want to be. Another thing that I've learned that's really important is the quality of your work can only take you so far. I think relationships can take you that extra step and further your career. There's been so many relationships over the years that I've been able to foster both within my own team and also on the client-facing side that have really allowed me to continue to grow my career in a successful way. On the client side, you have producers, art directors, creative directors, and within your own team, you also have assistants, light techs, digitechs, hair and makeup artists, stylists. These relationships are all so important to not only the success of your own career, but also building a community. You can't do this alone, and I think the more that you try to single yourself out and not build a community of your own, you're only doing a disservice to yourself. Allowing yourself to get involved with your local creative community is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. Not only will this help you when work is slow and you need someone to bounce ideas off of, but it also allows you to build your community up and hire your friends on for work projects as well. Also, don't be that person that has some sort of ulterior motive to your work relationships. Come at them from a genuine perspective and allow them to unfold naturally like a friendship would. That's the best way to go about it in my book. Alright, so just made it up the hill for sunset. Unbelievably beautiful. Gotta park it over here on this nearby hillside. Alright, so we made it up here for sunset. It's pretty stunning right now. I'm definitely gonna shoot a few photos later, but I wanted to continue talking about some stuff that I feel like I've learned over the years, and it's cool to be able to reflect. And me being up here, I'm actually midway through a solo road trip. I'm gonna be heading home here in a few days, but I've spent the last 3 days camping, and I'm about to head into San Francisco for the next several days and hang out with a friend of mine. Prioritizing these trips for me has been super inspirational, and that's kind of the key point I wanted to talk about next is the way in which you find inspiration. And I think a lot of what I looked for inspiration-wise earlier on was just to kind of mimic what everybody else is doing, which I think is a natural way to do things, especially when you're learning how to take photos and finding your own voice. But I've slowly gravitated away from that and tried to find inspiration elsewhere. Now, obviously, there's photo books, there's websites, there is Instagram and social media, but I find that the best way to get inspired is actually doing things that aren't photography related. For example, coming out here, going for a few hikes, being able to camp, reset my mind. When I go home, I feel much more inspired than any book or website or Instagram could ever do. And it's a huge piece of advice that I wish I knew earlier on, was just to kind of try new things in life and find inspiration outside of what you do for a living. I ride my bike, I cook. There's a lot of things that I love to do that I fill my time during the day. Obviously, I love to camp and hike. So find whatever that is for you. You know, it could be something similar. It could be cooking yourself a nice meal. It could be going on a road trip. It could be picking up a sport or an activity. I think having multiple things that are outside of, you know, the world in which you work is only going to benefit you and help you become more inspired at the end of the day. I think something that I've done pretty well over the last decade or so, which is even crazy saying that, is I found a way to always be pretty self-motivated. And I think that's something that is not talked about enough when it comes to, yes, creative careers, but also just entrepreneurship in general. You have to be a self-starter. And if you're not, you have to find a way to make that happen. Work is just not going to randomly fall into your lap. You know, I'm a big believer in doing the groundwork and kind of laying that foundation for the opportunities to come up. You always got to be ready, be prepared, you know, make sure that your skills are fresh, make sure that you're constantly learning. Learning new techniques is a big one. But at the end of the day, you got to find a way to be motivated in all areas of your career. And for me, when I first moved to LA, I remember one of the first things that I really dove into was artificial lighting and using strobes. It was something I had no idea how to use. Quite frankly, it scared me, the idea of using any sort of artificial light, when I usually like to rely on simply just the sun, natural light. But that's what was comfortable to me. And stepping out of your comfort zone, learning new techniques and new things will really elevate you more than anything else. But you also have to be the person to start that in the first place. And especially when it comes to reaching out, meeting new people, building that roster, building that Rolodex of people that you can call on. All of that has to come from within. None of it is going to be served to you on a silver platter. You got to be the one to make a lot of this happen. And, you know, if you're already a self-starter, great. But I do think it's something that you can also learn if that's not typically who you are. You know, I would consider myself a fairly calm, not necessarily shy, but I'm not the kind of person that's going to speak to an entire room of people just naturally. Stuff like that I've had to learn over the years, and it's been good for me, but it's definitely been a challenge. But I'm here to say that, you know, no matter where you're at in life, no matter who you consider yourself to be, it's definitely possible to find a way to motivate yourself from within. But I do think that's a huge part of finding success in this industry. Also, can we just appreciate how beautiful this sunset is? Right over the ocean. All right, so with all that, I wanted to leave you guys with kind of my final piece of advice. I think the thing that most people forget, and it's probably the most important part, probably the most important thing I'll say in this whole video, you got to remember to have fun with it. And that's exactly what I'm doing out here right now. And what I do on a probably almost monthly basis, if not more, is I always carve out time to enjoy photography for what it is rather than like what it does for me. So many of my friends, once they started making money with it, that's all they could ever do, and that's all they ever waited around for, and they kind of forgot why they started loving it in the first place. And I've always tried to keep that love no matter what happens in life, no matter how slow or how great work is. You always got to carve out time to have fun and to really enjoy photography for what it is to you. To me, the most enjoyable part of photography is taking these road trips with friends, even by myself, and just seeing the world and taking photos. And, you know, for me, travel photography has been such a great escape from the kinds of stuff that I shoot for work. And so I encourage you, you know, wherever you're at in your career, you got to remember to always have fun with it. You got to always remember to ask yourself, why did I start doing this in the first place? And it really does keep the spark alive, and that's how I'm able to still continue to take photos to this day. I picked the camera up technically when I was 15 years old, so we're approaching year 13 of me being interested even in photography, and I can honestly say that I have never lost the love for it. There's been times where I haven't enjoyed it as much as I normally do, but I've always found a way to get back outside and to take those photos. So with all that being said, it's the most wonderful thing in the world, but it can also be really challenging. Hopefully some of this advice helped you guys even just a little bit. If you have any more questions or anything else, feel free to leave that down below. But yeah, I'm going to watch the rest of the sunset. Before this video wraps up, though, I did want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, which is Squarespace, for sponsoring today's episode and this road trip. Without sponsors like Squarespace, I would not be able to do stuff like this and to be able to bring you guys along, most importantly. So big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. As you guys know by now, they're just the best way to make any sort of creative website, whether you're looking to display your work, create e-commerce pages, sell digital or physical products, even make a print store. Squarespace makes this so easy to be able to design and also lay out the website in a way that makes sense for you. If you guys want to check out Squarespace for yourself, there'll be a link down in the description to receive 10% off their first website or domain purchase. Thanks to Squarespace as always for sponsoring this video. I'm going to enjoy the rest of the sunset. Take care, guys. Happy 2025.